Okay, welcome to the next learner training video. This one is about connected speech. This is the final video of the 3 videos related to pronunciation that we're going to do on this course. This one is slightly related to the weak forms video, so I just want to recap from what we did last or 2 lessons ago about the weak forms. I'm going to give you a sentence and I would like you to identify the weak forms in the sentence. You can pause the video for however long you need, and then when you're ready, press play and we will do that exercise. So try to find the weak forms in this sentence. Okay, the weak forms, they are the words that have no meaning in and of themselves, the grammar words. Here's a weak form. Here's one, and here's one. Semi-weak forms we spoke about a little bit, like pronouns like I and he, but the grammar words are definitely these 3. And then the words that are pronounced strongly or stressed, I'll make in nice bold blue. In this case there are 2 verbs, know and lived, and then a noun, street. Okay, so the pronunciation, long sound here, shortish sound somewhere, something in the middle, and then just dots, let's say, like Morse code, if you know what Morse code is, that sort of technology that they used in the Second World War to communicate. Notice that this is 2 syllables, so we'll have 2 little dots. So listen to the sound. I didn't know he lived on the street. I didn't know he lived on the street. Okay, so in blue we're talking about the weak forms here. Forms here. Okay, but this video we're talking about connected speech. So let's make it into red here, and we're going to be talking about connected speech. So anything I do in red on this page will be about connected speech. Now what I'd like to do is go back to the sentence that we looked at in the weak forms video. Can you remember what that sentence was? You must have repeated it a few times. It was, he looked as if he was going to cry. Okay, now here it is, but over here what I've done is I've made or converted the sentence into phonemic script. Now, as I said, you don't need to know these symbols, but this is just a visual representation of the sounds that I would be using in that sentence. But what I'd like you to do is to focus on the t sound here, the s sound here, and the f sound here. What happens to those sounds when you say them in a normal speed in English? Okay, let's go to this program, Adobe Audition. I've slowed down that sentence by about 300%, and I want you to listen for the t sound of looked, the sound of as, and the f sound of if. Looks as if, yes. And I want you to notice where those sounds have ended up in the sentence. Okay, so listen carefully now.
You look as if he was going to cry.
Okay. Do you notice again? You want to listen one more time? Where does the t, especially the t, it's easy to see, to hear that one. Where does it end up? Is it connected to look, or is it more connected to as?
You look as if he was going to cry.
Okay. What's that little thing there? Oops. That little thing there is the t of looked. Looked. It's very light. Looked. But notice that that whole sentence, that whole bit there is the word look. So all of that's there. All the sound, the time of that word is spent on this left-hand side of the diagram of the sound file, but then the t and the if, the t and the as, look, tas seems to work together. Ts. So if I just highlight this area up to here, listen to it. Tziffy, tziffy. He looked as if he was going to cry. That is the most common form of connected speech in English, and it happens in other languages. French is a classic example. The French language has a lot of this, but English as well, and it's partly related to being a stressed timed language. Okay, so let's have a look at this diagram. What happens here is that he stays the same, but looked as if he seems to join. The rest have remained generally this, well, they remained exactly the same. Can you work out the rule? What is the rule that says that the t should join to the z, the s should join to the if, and the f should join to the he? Think about it. Got the idea? Look at this little thing here. That is a vowel sound. Here is a vowel sound. So if there's a vowel sound, in this case it's the schwa because it's weak form, the t, or the final consonant of the previous word, joins to the next word. I'm not saying if there's a full stop in a new sentence or a comma, of course it doesn't join in that case, but if it's single phrase, that's what happens in English. So it becomes look, t, z, fi. Now some of you might say, hang on, that's not a vowel. He is not a vowel. But remember, we said that he, or I, the pronouns, are sort of semi-weak forms. And in semi-weak forms, the h sound becomes a lot weaker than usual. And often what happens then is that the previous consonant sound joins to that. And so we have he looked tziffy, tziffy, tziffy. Okay? Connected speech. Now let's have a look at the connected speech in this sentence. Now that you know the rule, the final consonant sound of the previous word joins to the vowel sound on the next word. Can you find the connected speech in this first sentence? There's only one. Lived on. Is there another one though? Because remember, he is a weak form. So there's only one definite one, we can be sure. Lived on the street, lived on the street, and then Howie. Now, that's the most common form of connected speech, joining the final consonant to the next vowel sound. But there are actually two more examples of connected speech in this sentence. The first one here is here. Remember, the K of no is silent, so we can just safely remove that. But this sound, ntn, is difficult. Remember, English is a lazy language, so this ntn sound is very strange. Didn't know, didn't know. So what happens? The T is lost. Didn't know, I didn't know, I didn't know. The T is silent. And over here, look, two S's together. Is it this street? No, it's this street. This street. The S becomes longer. Okay, so now we've got, I didn't know he lived on the street. I didn't know he lived on the street. Why is this important? Well, obviously, if in the exam the actors or the voice actors in the listening are using connected speech, which of course they are, then you need to know these things. And if you can't produce them, you can't say them in your with your own voice, what's the problem? You can't hear it. Okay, let's move on to the next two examples. Let's start with this one. can you try and find all the examples of connected speech in this case? Okay, so you can pause the video if you like, and then when you're ready, come and tell me where are all the connected speech examples in this sentence. Okay, so the same thing happening here. Didn't know, we can copy that. The T becomes silent, and of course K is already silent. So I don't know. That's why sometimes you might even see people write I don't know, because it's exactly the situation. The T becomes silent. So I don't know, they might remember, it's like gonna. You can't write that in the IELTS exam. You can certainly send a text message to a friend, I'm gonna be late, I don't know what time I'll be there. Okay, but that's what's happening there. Now is there a connected speech here? Is how, where, when, who, are those weak forms? No, they're not. Those are very important words. How, I can make a whole sentence with how. I climbed over that tall fence. How? Question mark. That is a full sentence. That has a lot of meaning in it. Okay, so in this case, we do not say no how, no wow. I don't know how you put up with it. Okay, so certainly not in this case is the H silent or in any form weakened. Now this is another, it's a trick question related to weak forms, but I'll come back to that one. Okay, so weak forms, there's an issue here, but still, it still applies. Put up with it, and it's not the H, of course, it's that whole sound, which is the first sound, joins here. So put up with it, put up with it, put up with it. I don't know how you put up with it. I don't know how you put up with it. Now let's go to the blue so we are sure. The blue is related to weak forms. So we change this arrow to blue. Where are the weak forms? Try and pause the video and think about it. How many weak forms are there in this sentence? And remember, I said it's a trick question. So think about it. Okay, so here's a weak form, a true weak form, don't, fully weak form. Are there any others? There's the semi-weak, the pronoun I. Here's another one with it, semi-weak, and you. But are these weak forms, up and with? No, they are not. Why? Because they change the meaning of put. To put up with something is a phrasal verb, and it means to tolerate or to accept. So I don't know how you tolerate it. Somebody's annoying you and you remain very calm and happy and content with life, and your colleague says, oh, I don't know how you put up with that woman, she keeps annoying you. And you'll say, I put up with it because I have earphones and I can turn on the noise cancelling button and I actually don't hear anything. Okay, so put up with is a phrasal verb, and in these situations, up and with are never weak. They change the meaning of put. And I did say at the beginning of the weak forms video that I would give you an example of when this rule doesn't apply, and here it is. So I'm sorry it's come 2 videos later, but there it is. So I don't know how you put up with it. I don't know how you put up with it. Put up with. Okay. Last one. I can't see you next week. I can't see you next week. Which of these are weak forms? Let's keep it in blue. Only this one. Semi-weak, the pronouns I and you, and then everything else is very strong. So can't see you. next is an adjective, so therefore it must have some sort of meaning in it, and of course weak is a noun, so these are weak and these are strong. So I can't see you next week. I can't see you next week. Okay, now what happens to the t sound here? We're back into connected speech, so we are in red. I can't see you next week. Listen to it. Can't. The T as well is silent because n, t, s together, nts, nts. Difficult. Remember, lazy language. So the T becomes silent. I can't see. I can see you next week. I can. So k, n. I can see you. I can see you. But this one is can't. It's a long sound. So I can't see you next week. In American English, can and can't, it's very difficult to tell the difference if they are saying a positive sentence or a negative sentence with connected speech. You are fortunate that you get British pronunciation for this phrase because can and can't sound exactly the same, but can't, negative, and can, positive, are much easier to differentiate. Anyway, the T is silent, so it's I can't see you, and then next. Oh, lazy language. Next week, the T again is dropped. I can't see you next week. I can't see you next week. Well, actually, I'm saying it with the T sound because I'm trying to be very clear. But it's actually, most people would say next week, next week, next week, next week. Okay, so that's connected speech. I'm going to give you a link so that you can look more at connected speech, because I know this video might go on a little bit longer if I could do all of the examples. This applies only to some students, so if you're a French student, this shouldn't be a difficulty because most of what I'm doing here in connected speech applies in your language. However, in Thai, for example, this is completely new, so therefore you need to do a bit more study. So I'm going to post a link in the resources section from BBC that deals specifically with connected speech and all the different forms, so that you can do your own research if you think you need to. Okay, so I think that's enough for connected speech. If you have any questions, go on to the discussion space on Reddit for this video, and I'm happy to help you out with any questions that you have. Remember, there are other students who are also doing this, who might have already gone through all the materials that I've provided, and they might be able to help you with some of your questions. So rely on other students, collaborate, ask me any questions on that on the Reddit page or Reddit post, and we'll try and muddle through to get you the correct answers and the correct exercises that you need to do to improve your connected speech in English.